here with Bender.
And I'm here with Sydney.
And together we are BS Astrology. Today we're going to talk about the Venus in Pisces story with her ingress into Pisces in not a very long time from now. She's extremely aneretic in Aquarius as we are about to film this.
So bless us.
Bless us. Just for the time, it's 6:03 or 6:03 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We're in Oakland. It is January 2nd. We have two babies with us.
As you can see.
We have Betty.
We have Betty and Lamont. Here comes Lamont.
So
they'll be assisting us.
They're our stewards.
I love how the second we started, Betty was like, oh, now I'm awake.
You should know that we have a lot of Virgo things happening for us, which is why our babies need to be near us.
Yeah. We both are heavy Virgo people.
Yeah.
Which also means we're going to get into some nice nitty-gritty details for you guys.
And probably talk a little bit too much. So we're going to work it out.
That's what editing's for.
Right. So. Well, maybe.
We definitely, you said you wanted to edit as little as possible.
I do. So pray for us.
Bless us. So Venus is going to be going into Pisces today through February 4th. And it'll also be retrograding back into Pisces on February 28th. Did I have that right?
You have that. No. Venus will retrograde back into Pisces during the retrograde period on March 28th.
On March 28th. Sorry, that's my
scribbles. So, yeah, take a little note that after Venus goes into Pisces, she's going to go into Aries for a bit, and then she's going to be like, hold up, wait a minute, I forgot something. Bend and snap all the way back to Pisces for a moment.
Yeah.
So before we talk about the dates, let's just talk about maybe Venus significations in a natal chart, because typically people that are watching videos want to know what does it mean when you're looking at Venus in your natal chart.
Right. So Venus in the natal chart, some of the more obvious things, it represents relationships, how we love, our passions in life.
Yep. How we nurture.
How we
care.
Sure. Yep.
The kind of care that we like to give and receive, the kind of care that we need. It can be beauty, aesthetics, our relationship to the feminine kind of side of things.
Aesthetics are a big one. Yeah.
Money.
Money is a big one.
The condition of our money, how we like to spend our money.
Yep.
Some other things.
I feel like that's
that
covers
beauty. It can also be the arts.
Beauty, the arts. I think that goes back into your passions, like what creatively drives us. Those kinds of things.
And where's your Venus?
My Venus is in Virgo, which means that anytime Venus is in Pisces, I'm having a Venus-Venus opposition, which is fun for me. And typically Venus obviously depends on house system, but typically it's hanging out around my 6th house.
Yeah. So she's not necessarily in a good house either.
Yeah, my Venus is on the struggle bus a little bit.
Yeah. She's good at working.
She's great at working, and she's great at taking care of my dog, who's in a diaper right now. So
she's on her period. You gotta let it happen.
I know. I'm just saying.
She's a lady.
If there's ever anyone who's going to put their dog in a diaper, it's going to be a 6th house Virgo.
That's real.
The 6th house Virgo Venus. Yeah.
That's real.
Yeah.
My Venus is in Cancer, early degrees. In Placidus, it would be in the 10th house. Otherwise, it's in the 11th, and it's in pretty good condition, all things considered, though I am a day chart. So she's helpful, but she's not bountiful.
Yeah. I'm a night chart. So Venus gets a little boost from that. Yeah, for sure. Yep.
So just depending on where it is in your chart, you're going to want to look at the wheel, the 12 houses, and where you see Pisces is where Venus is going to be playing out this story, though she's going to be interacting with other planets in the chart.
So look at where your Venus is, look at where Pisces is in your chart for this particular transit.
Yeah. If you are immutable rising, this is all kind of playing out in the most prominent parts of our chart, the 1, 4, 7, and 10
Mhm.
houses. So that's pretty major, and you could probably get a little bit more noticeable effects of how Venus is playing out. Though if you have mutable placements, she's doing her thing to you too.
Mhm.
And let's see, if you're fire, not so much really.
I think it's going to have more of a dampening effect on fire
Yeah.
signs. It won't be the best, but it won't be the worst.
Yeah. But this is kind of really for the mutables and the mutable placements.
Yeah.
Like stuff is really happening. There's a lot of mutable mess in the sky right now. So just so you know.
and we'll get into the mutable messes that are happening a little bit more.
For sure. And water and earth get some love. They get like the nice harmonious trines and sextiles. The like, hey, you're nice.
Yeah. Sometimes the one thing is, especially with the sextiles, sometimes it's like so pleasant or agreeable that sometimes you don't notice it. But this is a good time to notice
flow. Just a little. There's a little bit more flow for like, I have a lot of earth in my chart, so Venus will be flowing to those, which I'm pretty thrilled about. I don't really, well, no, I have fire in my chart, but they're the outers, so I'm just gonna ignore them for right now.
We're talking about personal planets right now.
Okay,
but Venus and Pisces specifically.
Yeah, so the significations of Venus and Pisces.
Significations of Venus and Pisces. First of all, Venus is exalted in Pisces.
Yes. She loves being there.
She loves being in Pisces.
She gets to float and feel good.
She does. And I'd like to just make this point because Venus and Virgo, just to bring it down to reality a little bit, she likes to expand upon everything about Venus. So both the positive and the negative, right?
She's all the dreams.
Yeah.
Every dream.
All the dreams, all the delusions, all the illusions. And all the illusions are going to be magnified through Venus and Pisces for sure.
She's definitely more musical too. So if we go into like the aesthetics or arts, like beautiful placement for creating art, engaging with art,
any kind of creativity, any kind of engaging with your dreams. It's not necessarily a time for setting hard goals around your creative projects,
but you could do a vision board.
Vision boards are great for Venus and Pisces.
This is vision board time.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is also great too, because it is a new year and a lot of people are setting their goals and their aspirations for the year forward. So while this might not be the time for making concrete choices, this is a great time for visioning, like, what is your ultimate goal around, beauty, love, art, money, relationships.
This is a great time for dreamscaping. I like to use the term dreamscaping with this.
It's almost corporate, but I'll take it.
Thank you.
It's a very like Virgo.
Corporate stole it from us.
Yeah.
So.
but I love it.
Don't you tell me that that's corporate.
I'm sorry.
I was cool before corporate was cool.
Oh, wow.
But I was.
Yeah, you probably were.
Yeah.
No, corporate wasn't cool until like maybe 5 years ago, and it's not cool anymore.
I don't think corporate was ever cool.
Was it?
I think it was cool back when corporate people were doing a lot of cocaine. We're doing a lot of drugs, also Venus and Pisces. But anyway, escapism.
Yeah.
But anyway, Venus and Pisces, I think, I don't know, just to get into the more technical aspects of it, part of why Venus does so well in Pisces, I guess talking about like the elemental energy,
water,
a little bit. It expands.
Flows.
Yeah, it's
shapeshifts.
Shapeshifts. It's obviously like very nurturing for life and growth.
You need the vision in order before the seed is planted.
Exactly.
Before the action is taken, you need the full vision in order to move forward.
When you plant a garden, you're usually just playing around in some empty dirt at first. With the blind faith that a flower will come out of the dirt. So
it should be a beautiful time. However, we also need to talk about Venus's condition. So Venus in Pisces, this exalted, what we should want to be the ultimate of everything, is ruled by Jupiter, right? This is the dispositor of Pisces. And Jupiter is in what condition, would you say?
Struggling a little.
She's
she's not as bad as she could be, but she is in Gemini, which is in detriment.
And also retrograde. And also all the planets are she's here.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Yeah. And so with Venus and Jupiter both in mutable signs, particularly with Gemini, that means that she is going to make a square to Jupiter during this transit.
Sign-based square as well, just with the ingress alone.
Yep. So
it's like a confrontation, a reckoning.
It's a confrontation, but it's two benefic planets. So it's definitely a different kind of confrontation, right? This isn't just like full-blown knockdown, drag out, like
but Jupiter being the planet of too much.
Yeah.
And it's definitely in the space of too many ideas.
Yeah.
Too much information.
Too much information, almost like information overload for sure. With Gemini, with Jupiter and Gemini, it's just like so much information coming at you all at once.
Yeah,
right?
I have it in my 10th house by whole sign, and it's just, you want to do this? You want to do this? I'm like, no, it's too many things.
It's too many things.
But it's all happening. Yeah, and lots of options, lots of mental processing and conversations, and not all of them are fruitful.
No. In fact, many of them are empty promises. In the worst case scenario, especially with Jupiter interacting with Venus and Pisces, absolutely, it can just be straight up dishonesty, lies.
Yeah.
That's worst case scenario.
Yeah.
But I often see, especially because they're two benefics, I often see that there really is this like better intention. It's like good intentions, but not a lot of follow through.
Yeah.
Especially with with mutable signs. God.
Well, and just the mutability in the sky right now, right? Like even if we just talk about what Jupiter's condition, then we briefly need to touch on Mercury, because that is the dispositor of Jupiter. And that's in Sag, so he's also not
great.
He's not doing great. You know, he's in his detriment. He just blurts.
Yeah. So when we're talking about a lot of mutable energy happening. It's about like excess, right? Yeah. Like with Mercury and Sagittarius, it's almost like Mercury loves like details and can get lost, like lose the forest for the trees. But Sagittarius is big ideas.
Right? I got a story and I'm going to tell you, and it doesn't matter if it's true.
Exactly.
I'm going to blurt it out. It does not matter. But there's a mutual reception between Jupiter and Mercury by sign right now, not by aspect. So there is the potentiality for being able to resource each other if you're really making the effort to.
Yeah.
Asking yourself, is this right?
Yeah. Which is what astrology is for, right? That's where we can be more intentional with it. But there is a need to be intentional with this energy, because otherwise you're just going to find yourself kind of like expanding to.
And it's just kind of nice to know right now with the energy in the sky. It's like, oh, a lot of these planets aren't in the best condition. So like when information or a promise comes forward, to kind of really sit and take a pause before like either promising back or agreeing and going, hey, is this actually for my highest good? Is this actually true? Like this could not be a stronger time for researching something,
exploring, curiosity,
right? But before you repost, before you share the article,
or if you're like trying to get a project off the ground right now, and you're just like banging your fist against your head, like, why can't I make this happen?
You mean like trying to record this earlier?
Yeah. I've been here for hours before we actually started filming this. But it's okay. We figured it out. Here we are. It was definitely daylight when we first.
You know what? Nighttime is just so much better.
I'm a night chart, so I agree with that. I work better in darkness.
Are you Batman?
Maybe. I was gonna try to. I don't know if I would.
It would have been so good. I love it. Okay.
I'm still exploring my Batman impersonation. It's not ready to launch yet. It's not the time.
Oh my god. Don't wake up Betty with it.
I know.
Okay, so let's talk about the ingress though. Let's talk about like kind of what's going on with that, because we still have the moon in Aquarius during the ingress.
Yeah.
So, they are averse, but the moon is going to go and kiss Venus in a few hours I think probably in the middle of the night or in the morning tomorrow.
And Moon and Venus love each other, so that's great.
That'll be January 3rd. So we're talking about the ingress being January 2nd, 2025, just so you know. And then the moon will enter Pisces, the same sign, tomorrow, which is January 3rd, which will be Friday.
Yeah, tomorrow's Friday.
Great. So when Venus enters Pisces, we have a small pile up of Pisces planets, which is nice, except they're all answering to this kind of sus Jupiter that has just had its square with Saturn.
Yep.
It's going to have another one, which is, a part of this. This can be, because Venus in Pisces, or Venus in general, can be about money, right? And we have that Jupiter-Saturn square. We know that something potentially about finances and our economy is kind of up for some sort of another piece of data that's going to happen when that square happens. But
and common sense tells us that makes sense timing wise. Anytime you're about to move into a transfer of power, and what was it? I think it was like the day that Trump won. Like that it was announced that Trump won, like the stock market just like exploded.
The thing.
So anyway, so you're thinking about like buying that big thing right now, maybe stop to think about it a little bit.
It's just like, for all of the good that Jupiter can do, it is very much in a restraint place with Saturn. However, because there is a reception there, right, there's something still mitigating about it. It's like Saturn's kind of holding on to its tail.
Saturn in Pisces is holding on.
It's trying. But there's something there that's possibly a little bit more cooperative. Instead of it being on other sides.
Right.
There's something trying to work itself out. So at least we know that whatever the story is right now, there's that mutability. There's something working through. As we go forward. So what else is going on in this chart? The nodes.
The quincunx to the south node.
Right. So when Venus ingresses.
When Venus ingresses, it's going to quincunx the south node in Libra, which is just getting ready to make that shift into the next sign. So Venus squeezed in, at the 11th hour to make that quincunx to the south node.
One last adjustment.
Just a little tweak.
Just like release that one last thing. And there's also...
Which mutables also love.
Just one more thing. And also because of that ingress with the quincunx, it's also going to quincunx Mars. Right. The ruler of the north node. So this is just kind of like one of the last little gasps.
And with the quincunx, we know that quincunxes are by nature uncomfortable. There's discomfort. It's kind of like two energies that really just like can't quite seem to see eye to eye on things.
I really like how Rick Levine talks about the quincunx, which is like you kind of put your hand like right by your ear and you move it back just a little bit and you wiggle, and you can kind of see the wiggle, but you can't, like if you turn your head, your hand goes a little bit further back and you can't quite, it's like that person like whispering behind your ear and you turn around and they've already moved to the other side. It's like very much like the quincunx energy. You know it's there.
You know it's there, but there's just like nothing you can, like trying to lick your elbow.
Like you just can't
quite do it
fully, and you can't fully fix it. Maybe you can make an adjustment to make it a little bit more comfortable, but it's never quite perfect.
This is something that we learned to cope with. It's not something that you can pull the lesson. It's not necessarily like a square where you can pull a lesson from it. And grow through that. Doesn't mean you can't grow from quincunxes, but it's kind of like growth in the sense of like learning what you have to live with.
It feels like I have a lot of quincunxes in my chart. So what it feels like is lots of this. Like instead of the straight line up, it's just like like a chart.
Frenetic scribbling upward.
Exactly. Like the path to it's all a curly line instead of a straight trajectory. That's very much kind of what it feels like.
Fun and silly except not at all.
Silly. That's a word.
Silly's a word for it.
Spicy.
With the Venus quincunx, when we're talking about a quincunx to the South Node or any contact to the South Node, I think we're kind of talking about
release,
karmic release. Yeah. So definitely there's
some sort of awareness maybe about the value that you have these illusions about that you just need to let go of.
Yeah.
Right?
What are you valuing? Or what have you always placed a lot of value on that just it really hasn't panned out the way you thought it would?
Or what kind of care have you always desired, right? That is just, maybe it's potentially out of reach. It's not real.
Yeah.
It's not the kind of care that either you really actually need or is even obtainable.
Right. Especially with the quincunx, right?
Well, and also the nodes being the relationship kind of.
Yeah, because it's Libra, right? That's a great point. Yeah. South Node's in Libra, which puts North Node in Aries. So we're seeing kind of that polarity between self versus other.
Yeah. And asking us to be a little bit more independent, a little bit more self.
How do we practice self-love, right? I think that's a huge thing when we're talking about that balance.
Venus in Pisces doesn't want to do that.
Venus, no, absolutely
she just
not.
wants to absorb.
She wants to absorb. She wants
be absorbed.
She wants the juicy, totally maximalist kind of love story that they write songs and make movies about. And the reason we write songs and make movies about it is because it'll never be real.
In the rain, with a symphony, perfect looking person.
The rain falls at exactly the right moment.
Not too much tongue,
but your hair never gets frizzy from the rain.
Oh, it's perfect.
It's like that kind of vibe.
But then you go, oh, actually, that's not gonna happen. So I need to, maybe I drop one aspect of that and go forward, because we still have this whole journey of Venus in Pisces, right? Like she still has a lot more that she needs to go through. So let's go forward. So many days. We're in January 14th.
Okay.
Venus square Jupiter.
The Venus Jupiter square, which we've already kind of started digging into a little bit, but it's definitely worth kind of getting our claws in that a little bit more, because I think this is kind of like the first big plot line in Venus's story. You know, the Venus quincunx South Node was kind of like the rolling the credits at the beginning, kind of like the foreshadowing. But the first big plot line that we're gonna get is the Venus square Jupiter, which again, both immutable signs that are squaring each other. We have exalted Venus and Pisces squaring
its ruler.
Squaring its ruler, which is in detriment in Gemini. So we already have like a pretty complicated story starting to unfold here. It
kind of feels like a little bit of like too much, but not the right thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's where it can be like misleading information. And again, we're going to be like starting to close in on the impending why am I spacing right now? The inauguration. There we go. The inauguration of the U.S. president. I'm talking from a U.S. perspective, obviously.
But of note, Venus will have sextiled Mercury just before this, I believe. No, Mercury hasn't. They're starting their story.
The Venus Mercury sextile.
So
that's gonna start.
So around that time, there's like kind of these multiple stories kind of forming as this square is exact. It's Mercury is going to come up and sextile it right after, and then
conjunct
and conjunct
and conjunct Saturn.
Yes,
on the 19th. So what does that story tell us? What story is unfolding here?
I mean, the too much, but maybe it's not quite right. You know, it's like maybe I don't quite have all of the information or the right information I need in order to really form this story.
Right. I'm imagining Venus and Jupiter as like, I guess because it's Venus and Pisces, I'm imagining them as like two lovers who have just found each other.
Right.
And both of them are a little bit delusional about each other. And Jupiter in Gemini is making a lot of promises, and probably writing a lot, it's Gemini, so probably writing a lot of beautiful poetry or prose about
And
this
is Venus
person.
and Pisces love bombing?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's real.
There's definitely like believing the absolute best in each other. And that doesn't mean it's all completely untrue, but maybe it's kind of looking at it. It's too big. It's too expanded. It's placing too much value on all of the best of these things.
Yeah.
And therefore ignoring potential red flags, ignoring the information that we kind of don't want to hear, or we're just not even getting that information.
Yeah. And that square is also it's still informing that South Node story about letting go.
Right.
So this kind of too much of something. Maybe there's some sort of, with that story where the sextiles Mercury, so we get the information or the conversation that we really need.
Right.
And then it hits Saturn. That's the reality check.
Which it's still an interesting reality check because Saturn is in Pisces, right? So Saturn, and Saturn doesn't do the worst in Pisces. We were talking about before we started recording, but
I'm not thrilled about Saturn being in Pisces.
It's certainly not the most traditionally productive sign for Saturn.
Yeah.
I think that the biggest thing that makes Saturn and Pisces weird is obviously Saturn is all about boundaries and structures, and
it's like limiting the dream.
Yeah, but like necessarily, like, let's talk about Saturn in the best way possible. It's like the necessary limiting of dreams, right? It's kind of like putting down the walls of like, if you want to accomplish this dream, this is what it actually has to look like.
Yeah.
But when Saturn is in Pisces, I think it's kind of like doing a pivot in the other direction because obviously Pisces loves to dissolve boundaries. Pisces has no boundaries. Pisces is, our sweet, floaty, dreamy, imaginative. It's the ocean, yeah. So I think we see where Saturn's boundaries are dissolved, either in cases where we need to dissolve those boundaries because they've actually been serving as restrictions. But I think also it can just make the boundaries that maybe would be helpful to us, it makes it very fuzzy. It makes it a little bit unclear where our boundaries are or should be. So we move from this Venus square Jupiter toward. Do we want to say anything more about Venus square Jupiter?
I mean, Jupiter's still retrograde, so there's still some going over old territories around
stuff. And that feels like it really lines up with the Venus quincunx to the South Node, right? We're revisiting stuff. I think the whole first part of the first week or so, first 2 weeks of this Venus in Pisces, we are revisiting old patterns. And again, we're talking about Venus, so we're talking about old patterns of how we behave in relationships, how we nurture, how we bond. And we're kind of revisiting where have we been a little delulu about that.
And Jupiter's also about goals. So if we
and
the goals that we have,
chasing your dreams.
So
are our dreams realistic? Are we chasing the right dreams? Now, and again, I like to, I always like default back to the Virgo thing where I just want to be like super critical of everything. I just want to like take a pause here and talk about like why the function of like imagining and dreaming is a really important and necessary energy. I don't know if you want to. I have a couple things to say, but so talking about like why Venus in Pisces is, because it's easy, especially because we live in such a goal-driven, like high productivity kind of society.
Too much productivity.
Yeah, too much productivity. And I think that Venus and Pisces can kind of get a bad rap where it's like, this is the time where you're just like up in the clouds and you're like, nothing's going to get done. And I think that really gives Venus in Pisces a bad rap. And I think this is where I was going to go with the dreamscaping before we, as politically where I stand is I'm pretty radical left.
I mean, I wouldn't be sitting with you if I weren't.
Yeah, so we're going to put that out right at the beginning is radical left. And I think that there's kind of an understanding with radical left communities that we tend to be pretty pessimistic. We and it's understandable, right? We're coming from a place of compassion and wanting equality and equity in this world. And we are bearing witness to a lot of suffering, Pisces, a lot of suffering and a lot of inequality in this world. And if we're going by this concept of that, like our thoughts create reality, or like even in like, and this isn't like totally woo-woo stuff. There's quantum physicists are talking about like,
I mean, there's CIA papers about it anyways.
Yeah.
Take off my tinfoil hat. I'm so sorry.
That's going to be another episode. We did talk about how we're going to have a tinfoil hat episode. But yeah, I think that it's really, really important for us to remind ourselves, especially when we're at a really scary point in the world right now, where fascism has come knocking at our doors, and we've been seeing it coming for a long time.
And not believing that it was going to be here for some reason. There's a lot of people
that
are like, oh, I did not know that this was possible.
Yeah, and they're like, this isn't the America I know.
It's really quite phenomenal to watch it unfold the way that it has, as if it hasn't really been unfolding like this since the 80s.
Yeah,
I mean,
at least,
yeah. But I mean, I would say like the most like you can see it, you can pinpoint it.
Reagan. What's Reagan's chart?
Oh man, we'll do
if Reagan's a Venus in Pisces, I'm dead. Anyway, I doubt it, but I don't know. He's an actor. He was an actor. Anyway, so the point that I wanted to make is that I think where Venus in Pisces is so critical at this moment in time is that we, I think it behooves us to be dreamscaping the world that we do want to see,
developing a deeper sense of compassion and care for everyone and everything.
Exactly. Being the community that we want to see, and taking accountability for ourselves. Making note of where we have privilege, how are we using that privilege. But like, just to go back to like the Venus and Pisces, like letting yourself just like radically dream of like, what do you think a utopia would be like? What do you think that the best possible world could be like? And Venus and Pisces isn't here for the reality check. Like, obviously, if you think about like the greatest possible world, that may never happen, or it may be generations from now that could happen. But setting the intention now, and again, planting those seeds, planting that seed in the dirt.
Right.
I think that's what's really important about Venus and Pisces. So I just wanted to get there because there's so many conversations we had about like where we are delusional during times of Venus and Pisces, and that's not wrong. But also there are times where like we should be a little delusional, and we should let ourselves imagine a better world, or imagine the circumstances that we want to see.
Well, and there's so much to that too, because there is so much information and there is so much data out there to allow us to explore the ways that we want to create this vision.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so potentially this square, right? The square on January 14th is
to Jupiter.
To Jupiter is, this opportunity to kind of open and expand our options. But the imperative here is to not let ourselves go overboard or to make any definitive decisions at this point. I do feel like if you are a spend a bitch, you may be like, yeah, let's spend the money on this program, this thing, this app, this, piece of whatever that I feel is going to make me feel more connected or
informed
or something like that. And so there is the potential for overspending. This is an overspending type of aspect. And it's kind of like overspend. And then a few days later you go, oh, I looked at my bank account, that Venus, Saturn, and you go, oh, actually about that, maybe that wasn't quite what I should have done. So, you know, there's a caution to just not go overboard in how we are maybe professing, proclaiming, declaring, promising at that time. But still, having the dream, having the dare to dream is great. It's just how you use it is possibly.
Again, vision board.
Don't. Pinterest, babes.
Pinterest.
Could use that.
Absolutely.
So that's the square. And also what's, you know, during that square, the moon will be in Leo. So it'll be very like creative feeling. So this, I mean, this is really like, that's vision board time for sure.
It's the best possible way to spend Venus square Jupiter. Because I also think like Venus square Jupiter, even if like sometimes the results you get afterward are not what you expected or hoped for, but in the moment, Venus square Jupiter can feel great, you know?
I mean, it's the two benefics, right?
Like, two benefics who just really believe in the best in each other.
Could not get, you know, that's what you want. The square for the benefics is not going to act like, you know, a benefic and a malefic having a square, right? Or two malefics. This is a completely different energy where it's just more too much.
Yeah.
But like,
oh, I would also be careful of, too sweet. Definitely careful about your indulgences.
Yeah.
But also be careful about like if you engage in like recreational drug use or anything.
Yeah.
This is a little bit of a tough time, especially if it's like mind altering stuff with that Jupiter and Gemini.
It's not, you're not necessarily going to get exactly what you bargained for. Like whatever that dreamscaping that you might have wanted to do with whatever hallucinogen, there's a second part to that. There's like part 1, part 2.
Exactly.
Like Jupiter being in Gemini, the two.
Oh yeah, because there's a duality, both with Pisces
duality
and Gemini.
It's just like part 1, part 2. It's great and then it's bad, or you know, it's sus and then it's great. But you don't really get to choose how that's going to work.
That like really doubles down on the like excess of information that we've got two double-bodied signs working with.
Well,
each
and
other.
have you noticed all of the lookalike contests that people are having and stuff like that?
So the Luigi Mangione lookalike.
Yeah, I mean it's all of the different stars, and they're all having them. Like it's at what's it called, Central Park, or in other places like in New York and other parts of the country where like people are finding all of these different, you know, the dupes of this various star, this various person, and like it's just kind of, you're shaking a lot, my love. Oh, you're licking. I love it for you. But all of this like two, you know, there's two of everything, Gemini being the twins. So it's like there's an excess of two. We're also kind of watching this splitting of things into two, right? Like good versus bad. And like that duality is not necessarily useful because there is like this huge gradation of gray. And I think that's one of the things we're trying to kind of point out. It's like Venus and Pisces sound so amazing, but there is a gray area here because the condition of her isn't as great as she could be, unfortunately. Later on in 2027 or 2026, when 2026, when Venus goes into Pisces, like, whew, buddy, that's going to be beautiful. And I cannot wait.
And like, get ready, because whatever you learn or whatever you, you know, whatever you synthesize right now, the lessons that you glean from this Venus in Pisces, the rewards that you will get the rewards of those lessons learned. Next Venus and Pisces go around. So this is definitely just a time. This is like a good like step back, be like a little more passive and mutable. Right now with the information
learning, synthesizing, processing rather than doing or making definitive choices. Okay, let's move forward. So we're forward a few days, January 18th. This is now the reality check. This is Venus conjunct Saturn. She is going to do that at 16 Pisces. So if you have any mutables at mutable placements or planets within about 5 degrees, let's call it 3 to 5 degrees on either side, that reality check has come to you.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome.
Hey.
Yeah.
So yeah, and again, we started talking about this a little
She's
bit.
fuzzy though.
She's fuzzy. It's Saturn and Pisces. You know, the boundaries are dissolving here a little bit.
I just keep thinking about art. Like whenever when I think about like the Venus and Saturn and Pisces conjunction and how that would even potentially display, would say, in a child that was born with that aspect.
Yep.
It's like really being able to like bring into form or some sort of like foundation of like beautiful art.
Yeah.
Like ethereal art.
And something that kind of
otherworldly
that very much appeals to like a broad number of people,
right? You know, because Saturn being like more of a cultural sign.
Exactly. Yeah. And Saturn is also about like one's own legacy. So I think so again, like this isn't necessarily a time to like put up the art show and expect to become a famous artist, but definitely a good time to start like honing in on those creative ideas that you might have. That, you know, the few days of this transit could be a good time,
and the creative ideas that you have also depending on where it is in your chart, right? Like in mine, I'm a Virgo rising, so fun. Spicy. But so it's a good one for you. It's happening in my 7th house, right? So I would be asking myself about like these kinds of, you know, partnerships or relationships that are, you know, kind of forming, and how I want those to be molded essentially, or what kind of things are happening in my life that need a bit of a reality check around how I'm going into partnership with people, or even in, you know, romantic or one-on-one partnerships. I mean, there could also be some sort of meeting of enemies, and it doesn't suck.
Yeah. Venus can be about meeting your enemies. It's basically any like one-on-one relationship that's really important to you.
Pisces can be, you know, it is supposed to be a sign of like healing.
Yeah.
So like maybe that could be for, you know, one of my 8 enemies.
Maybe letting go of some of that, making the choice to forgive. For sure. We're still working on it.
We're working on it. I'm a work in process.
And it's not like I can judge. So Pisces is my 12th house most of the time. So you know, all of my like deeply subconscious past life shit, I guess.
So just depending on where it is in your chart, like you can ask about like the reality check around values that you're holding in that specific place. If it's in your 2nd house, finances, like what a interesting place for that to be happening. Your 3rd house could be siblings. It could be the communications that you're holding around maybe the kind of care that you offer or you need.
8th house, how, like
transformation.
How are you transforming resources that you're sharing? I don't know.
Weird tax stuff.
Which,
weird death stuff.
Ugh, I hate death.
Inheritance.
Sex. Things around sex.
It definitely feels like an inheritance aspect if it was in the 8th house with Venus and Saturn joining. Like that is very much like something around inheritance, whether it is like ancestral or it is literally like through somebody's estate. Like it almost kind of feels like maybe somebody is given art through an estate from like a dead uncle.
That would be a very specific Venus Saturn moment, but absolutely,
if it happens, comment in the. I want to know.
Tell us your Venus Saturn moments. I told you this story, but when we were getting ready to film this, we were talking about. Oh, and this is an important thing to note: is that this is the last time Venus and Saturn will be conjuncting in Pisces before Saturn moves into Aries.
So that's a major story especially for mutable placements. Within those degrees. It's also for water placements. There's something kind of like finishing up. Like there's a kind of almost like a button or a bow kind of being placed on things. Also of note, during this conjunction, the sun will be anoretic. In Saturn sign of Capricorn.
And Capricorn.
So there's some sort of story that has to do with, our creative identity, the world's creative identity.
The world's creative identity, absolutely.
It's the ego, our, sensibilities around responsibility and authority and
which again is going to be the day before the inauguration. Telling you?
Very deeply strange time. And during this conjunction as well, when it's still holding strong, right, we will be in inauguration time. It will be separating, and the sun will now be in the sign of like the people, more of the, of community, of Aquarius, meeting up with Pluto. So it's this value story, this story about care and compassion and relationship.
And just to make a quick note about the nature of Aquarius, especially, I would imagine a lot of the people who would tune into a video like this probably lean toward our political,
or they found out and then they either hung on or they left.
Yeah, exactly. Now they're just like rage watching, but no.
Welcome.
I think that I saw it. I used to see it a lot in like pop astrology, or like if you're just like Googling like what does Aquarius mean, and it's like Aquarius is the sign of the humanitarian, and I think that kind of like automatically, that kind of language can automatically assign a value to Aquarius, that Aquarius is like progressive or
and not necessarily. It's just the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Exactly.
And like whatever the needs of the many, what they deem are the needs of the many, whether that is fascism or utopianism of some sort, where it's a little bit more collective and maybe it's not humanitarianism from one perspective, right? I think is probably the way we should
that's just a point I always like to make, because it's really easy to get lost in this thing of like Aquarians are like so future minded and that kind of thing, and
they can be.
There's everybody has a different idea of what our future should look like.
But I will say that a lot of Aquarians that I've met are definitely like a little bit too cool for school. Like they're just like one step ahead, whether that is for bad or for good, right? Like they could be nefarious. They're just one step ahead. And like,
well, that's the thing with Aquarius is they can convince you to follow them.
Air signs.
Very fixed air signs.
Cerebral. They got fixed ideas about how to move forward. So,
and they know how to appeal to the masses. So definitely can get you to follow them and be convinced that the direction that they're going in is the direction that's going to be best for you and the people around you. So it can go either way.
But there's a lot of, I would say there's a lot of anaretic stuff about this particular chart that's happening on January 18th, right before the inauguration is, we have the nodes are at 0. They are about to bust. And this story between Venus and Saturn coming and making its, final kiss in this sign, while the nodes are in these signs. So while Venus is still the ruler of the South Node is of note, with the sun anaretic. I mean, Pluto technically kind of is. It's at 1 degree. Like everything is going is like in the shifting moment right now. Everything is like either in the last degrees of a sign or in like the very beginning of a sign. Pluto is just coming into Aquarius. And we should also note too that Mars has retrograded back into Cancer at this time. And so,
and Mars does not love being in Cancer.
No, it does not, and has been since really maybe the 14th. No, before then. I didn't write down that time. January 3rd, it was at 0. So I'm guessing it probably went about January 4th, January 5th, and went into Cancer. So, the ruler of the North Node, not in great condition.
At this moment.
As all of these things are happening too. So it's like the actions that we're taking to go forward are, can be very much about our safety and security. It can be about
and to bring that back to Venus and Pisces specifically is like how do we want to be?
There's something to the ruler of the South Node is exalted.
Mm-hmm.
The ruler of the North Node is in fall.
In fall, yep.
So there's still something. Oh, it's almost like
we're continuing the story of like things that still need to be
released.
But
there's also maybe a little bit more comfort in releasing rather than going forward. And so if in that story, that Venus Saturn conjunction, this reality check, this check-in, we allow ourselves to really learn and maybe integrate what needs to be let go.
Right.
Because going forward,
feeling like
scary.
feeling like we're in a better place to let go.
Yeah.
I think paying attention to your feelings around, like if we're talking about how it's impacting you personally.
Yeah.
The story that I told Sydney before about Venus and Saturn, because it's good to look back on the last time Venus conjuncted Saturn last year, which was around March 15th, I think
I think you said that.
Yeah, it was around March 15th of last year. So pull out your old planner. What were you up to the weekend of March 15th? At that time for me last year, right, as the Venus conjunct Saturn aspect was happening, my nephew came to visit and stay with me, and it was kind of the most concentrated amount of time I had spent with my nephew. He just got adopted into the family.
How old is he, if you don't mind me asking?
He turned 16 in August. Okay. So he was 15 at the time.
Gotcha.
And obviously he had already been in the family for a little bit. And I felt this pull of like unconditional love and wanting to be, I felt personally responsible for making him feel welcome in the family and but he has a lot of trauma. Spending that extended amount of time with him was definitely a little bit of a reality check for me about kind of revisiting where I had some phobias around commitment and kind of the ways in which I had engaged in more committed relationships. Because it was a reality check, and the stakes felt a lot higher with this traumatized young person who I did not want to further contribute any trauma to. Yeah. When Venus conjuncted Saturn, it was really kind of this like time to get real and time to really show up, kind of figure out like how to really show up for people and figure out how to sustainably be present with people and be committed to people.
Yeah.
So that was like my Venus conjunct Saturn moment last year.
It's definitely a commitment aspect.
For sure. Yeah. And yeah, committing to your art, committing to the things you're passionate about, committing to people in your life.
Yep.
And so, sometimes Venus conjunct Saturn can definitely remove people or things from your life
I mean, Saturn is also can sever.
Yep.
It's not as cutting, but it's like the boundary, the ending. It's like it's also like creating a boundary around your love or the care that you offer. This is telling your partner, these are my boundaries, these need to be respected. It can be also removing, since Saturn is cold, it can also be basically a freezing out of something, And
again, with the Venus Saturn conjunction in Pisces specifically, I think it can speak a lot to where have I been restrictive in how I'm willing to connect with my art or to the people around me? Where do I need to dissolve those boundaries in order to have more meaningful connection?
It would also be prudent if, you're a little bit further on in your astrology to look at the houses that Venus and Saturn rule. Yeah. Because this conjunction, wherever it is, whatever house, it's happening in that house, but it is ultimately affecting the houses that Venus and Saturn rule for you. So it's just kind of like concentrated here, but the effects splay out. Right. And I think it's always important to remember that when we have aspects, because we can look at the one specific house, but you don't understand that there's just a little, it can go even further than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
The rabbit hole goes so deep.
Yeah. So like with Venus, look at where the house ruled by Taurus or
And
Libra.
Yeah.
And then with Saturn, look at your houses ruled by Aquarius or Capricorn.
And then also look where Saturn is.
Yeah, look at literally where is Saturn and where is Venus in your chart when
Yeah.
these things are happening, because then you'll see where what two houses are kind of interacting with each other.
My Libra house has Saturn in it.
Yeah.
And that's in aspects. So like I know where this is going to ultimately kind of play out. I'm interested in how it does it.
Yeah.
Like it's in my 7th house, but it's affecting my 2nd and my 11th house and my 5th house.
Interesting.
And my 9th house.
So you've got like a web going on right now.
For sure.
7th. So your 7th, your 2nd. So both of your Venus houses. And then you said your 11th.
Yeah. So
and your 9th.
Yeah, Saturn in my 2nd.
Right.
Which is where Libra is. Venus is in my 11th.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then Taurus is in my 9th.
Yeah.
All of that. So it's definitely.
And you have a Taurus stellium.
Yes.
In the 9th.
But it's just like a splash. So like I always, when I'm like, oh, look at that conjunction, how tidy. And then I'm like, no, actually it's not tidy.
It's actually fucking with everything.
Which is always so fun when you get to look at clients' charts where you see exactly where it's going to happen, but you're like, oh, but like really? Like the meat of it, how it really shakes down is in all of these different houses.
Yeah. Exactly.
And depending on what is happening in those houses, it can be far more, intricate or just really simple as well.
Yeah.
Like if you already have Saturn and Venus in that house and you have this happening, it's happening right there. It's right there, right then. And that's great. So
and if you have a natal Saturn Venus conjunction, it could feel like very familiar energy to you. Yeah. Like it could not necessarily pass you by, but it could feel much more already integrated.
Yeah, it can be more subtle.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, all of those things to think about,
to keep in mind.
Yeah. So I think that's a pretty good overview of the Venus Saturn conjunction. Again, it's going to be the day before the U.S. presidential inauguration.
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely going to be there's already been a lot of conversations about people feeling disillusioned by the promises that a certain someone made on the campaign trail. And they're wondering why they voted for him.
And now there's probably a little bit more information too, because in that time frame of the conjunction, we also have the sextile to Mercury.
Right.
So there is a conversation, a flowing aspect, right, of a conversation that, Mercury in Capricorn is like, I know the actual concrete details. Yeah. Now, these concrete details are a little fuzzy, like Capricorn ruled by Saturn. Yeah. It's in Pisces. Yeah. A little fuzzy, but there's definitely some reception there.
Yep.
So there's information that we can kind of get our hands on.
Right. Especially Capricorn is no bullshit. Capricorn is like, what's the bottom line here?
Love a Capricorn.
I know.
I love them. I love them.
We're both like very earthy. Yeah, we're like earth for earth.
Give me all the Capricorns.
I know. And you can just, there's, again, like you said, it can be a little fuzzy with the mutual reception with Saturn right now. But I do think that fundamentally, like the energy of Capricorn and of Mercury and Capricorn is like, let's get down to brass tacks. Like let's lay out the facts and see what's going on here. It's a sextile, so it's like a soft kiss.
It's a soft kiss, but I think it's an important kiss.
Yeah.
And then we have, if we move forward
to the 25th.
25th, Venus trine Mars. So this aspect I think is really interesting because the rulers of the nodes are now in a flowing conversation.
Yeah.
So whatever kind of happens here enables both the North Node to be expressed and the releasing in the South Node to happen simultaneously.
Right. I was going to say, so we've been having that conversation about releasing up till now.
But now there's also some things happening here to allow us to also go forward.
Yep.
And Venus trine Mars is relationships, that's a flowing relationship aspect.
Absolutely.
You could not ask for, I
Yeah.
mean, even though Mars is, retrograde, he's
Yeah.
in Cancer, he's
Mhm.
not happy there, but at least with
It could be cozy.
it could be cozy.
Venus, because
It's
Pisces and Cancer love each other.
It is emotional,
Yeah.
but it's emotional flowing energy. So like, I don't know, go have sex in the
I was gonna say,
water.
like, go make love. Like, that's, you know, you're like, ew.
It's such a like
I don't have any water in any of my more
late
personal
80s
planets.
term. Oh my god.
Let's go like make love, you know.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's
But we like the flow. We like the flow.
Yeah. Yeah, very juicy, watery, very
Mhm.
flowy.
Great
Venus
for
is still in Pisces, so it's
relationships.
like just important to keep that ongoing theme in mind with these transits. Is like, and part of why I said like let's make love is because it's Venus and Pisces. Like,
Yeah.
if you're talking about like the most like advantageous like height of romance moments for Venus and Pisces this
Yeah.
transit, which like Venus and Pisces is so here for.
And it's a
I think-
closing trine, right?
Yeah.
Is that disseminating? I'm trying to remember the word for it.
Applying.
But it's like the last trine.
Oh,
disseminating.
I think it's disseminating.
The disseminating trine. So it's like
the semen, maybe.
But it's like it knows how to work the energy. It knows
Right.
how to put it forward. It
Yeah.
isn't like a realization of the energy flowing. It is like, yeah, this energy is going.
Yeah, it's already on the move.
Yeah, it's juicy.
It's definitely one of those like if it's meant to be, like now is where it shall be.
Yeah. She's juicy.
Yeah.
So I think, I mean, just I like that aspect for getting things done. It also like, again, it feels like dance. It feels like art. It feels like painting. It feels like,
and it feels like a much needed break from kind of like the more challenging first half of this transit, where there's just like a lot of releasing and a lot of like almost like caginess of like what's actually going on here.
It's almost like just knowing how, like, exactly what you need to let go of and how to go forward. But this is short. It's short. It's a day, maybe.
It's a day. It's
always because
like a day.
Venus immediately goes and sextiles Uranus. So it goes, surprise, surprise. But
surprise, surprise.
And maybe a little bit more in flow than shock.
Yeah, because it's still a sextile, so it's inspirational
rather than shocking.
Yeah, like light bulb moments.
Yeah,
you know,
it's the idea.
Yeah,
and it's all around value, right? Because it's
Uranus and Taurus.
Yeah, ruled by that Venus and Pisces. So it's like the idea of exactly the inspired idea of how you need to go forward in order to care for yourself, care for others, nurture, make money, make art, make your vision happen. Like,
you can kind of like see the moments of like, in that moment you can see where like where your highest ideals really could come to fruition.
It could be really cool.
Finding creative ways to make those dreams come true.
Yeah, I think it could be. I mean, I love Uranus.
Me too.
I just love that weird planet rolling on its side. So this inspiration could just come out of left field too. Yeah. It's not. Just be open. Just be open.
Being
to that idea. And the this sextile also hits again in Pisces and Taurus on April 7th and 20th, while Pisces, while Venus is retrograde. So there's something about this idea, maybe that's not fully cooked or it's half cocked.
That's why it like makes it like, it's the light bulb moment, right? It's not the moment where it's like, I did it. It's I thought of it, right? Yeah. And then we can revisit that, in 3 months time?
Yeah.
When Venus retrogrades back into Pisces.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. So again, and it does reinforce, like, it's still a nice light bulb moment, but the overall story here is definitely like, consume the information before you make something of it. Except with the Venus Mars trine. figure out what you can do with that.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're gonna need it to get you through.
And then we have kind of the last. Is it maybe it's like the last gasp of Venus?
The last gasp.
As she plunges into the water.
Yeah,
which is
Venus-Neptune conjunction.
Venus-Neptune conjunction.
So it actually works, but
it does, and it's also when the moon is in Pisces.
Yeah,
and so moon in Pisces. Can we talk about it for a second?
Let's talk about it.
She can be a little sad.
She can be. I think Pisces can. I think Venus in Pisces can be sad.
Yeah, it's just kind of like
it's longing, it's yearning.
Yeah, And with Saturn there, like there's this pile up of Pisces planets that includes Saturn, unfortunately.
Yeah,
and there's this sign based and some a little bit aspect based to Mars in Cancer.
Yeah,
there's just so much water going. It's almost like too much, and then now you're sad because it's too much.
Yeah, depression time.
It's just a little bit
despair time,
right? And the nodes have just shifted into North Node Pisces, South Node Virgo. So like the story in this beginning of the node shift is this Venus Neptune conjunction,
which is juicy as hell. Like
overwhelming.
It is,
love.
It's the shit that like the greatest art of all time is made of. Is like Venus conjunction.
It's like walking 1,000 miles just to kiss your lover one more time.
Yeah,
before they fall off a cliff.
Yeah, it's like Juliet poisoning herself to be with Romeo.
It's a lot.
It's gothic.
It's very gothic,
like gothic romance.
Yeah,
kind of thing. Yeah, like, giving it all up to be with the one you love.
Yeah, and it's very. I feel like this nodal story with this conjunction of Venus and Pisces with Neptune is interesting because I feel like it's really more geared toward the North Node, because that South Node in Virgo is ruled by Mercury in Aquarius, which is not bad.
No,
right, not at all.
No,
but he's burned up by the sun.
Yeah. Burnout by the sun,
and they're still ruled by Saturn and Pisces, so we're still coming back.
We're definitely coming back to that Pisces story. It's important to note that, like, obviously with Virgo in the South Node, there's going to be a lot of opposition for Virgo, but I think the story definitely seems to be honing in on like what Pisces is up to.
I'm really not trying to think of the opposition.
I'm like, honey, there's still the opposition. I have 3 planets in Virgo that are going to be sitting in the South Node.
We're all doing it. We're all doing it together.
Yeah, just releasing.
So, kind of some final dates before we do our final notes are February 5th. We'll have the ingress into Aries.
Yep.
We may be back to talk about that. We don't know. What is the future? We only watch time
now.
We don't know if it exists. March 1st is when Venus retrograde will begin. That'll be in Aries. March 28th is when Venus retrograde. The Venus retrograde cycle goes back into Pisces.
Yep.
And then April 12th is when Venus goes direct at 24 degrees Pisces. So there's something about the very end of Pisces, that ending story where Venus is around, 24, 28, that we need to revisit later on. So take note of those times, because there's something there. There's more information that we don't quite know about, and that makes sense because it's in Pisces and shit is confusing.
Yeah. And there's been a lot of again, like the condition of Jupiter during this whole time. There's just a lot of information.
Yeah.
And it's going to take some time to piece through all of that information.
Yeah.
And you are deluding yourself if you think that you can figure out all of this information as it comes out.
Yeah, if you think it's all locked in, you have another thing coming. I think is kind of when the biggest story, like the biggest realization I had in looking at all these aspects is like, for as good as something might feel, we really don't have all of the information. It's not fully concrete, and we're not in any place to really say this is what it is.
Right.
Instead, you can say, I think it may be this, but leaving a door open.
That's the big thing.
The mutability of leaving a door open is so key right now.
Yeah. So good luck to all you fixed signs. You're gonna hate it, but good luck. It's okay. I only have one fixed sign in my. Oh no, I've got two.
Well, bless you.
I've got a Saturn Mercury thing going on, but anyway, so yeah, those are kind of the big dates to keep in mind. From now until February 4th is when we're gonna have like the full body of Venus and Pisces, and then we're gonna revisit it in April.
The final bits.
Yeah.
So watch what story is happening.
Pay attention to that Venus-Neptune conjunction on the 20 on the 1st of February.
And also just the idea that Bender was talking about around dreamscaping. Really asking yourself about your values and your dreams and what you think is beautiful and what you think is worth it and what you need out of your relationships and how you like to nurture and be nurtured, and like just really it's a time to dreamscape that.
Yeah,
you don't got to make any definitive choices around it, but like ultimately what is the highest goal or ideal that you have? Because those things, you write them down. When you get to maybe revisit those when Venus is in way better condition, when she goes back into Pisces in 2026,
it's gonna be nice. It's gonna pay off.
She'll be cute then. But, so do the work now.
This is a waiting game, which is also very Saturn and Pisces, right? It's like this is a waiting game.
Time is an illusion.
Right? Yeah, exactly. It's gonna happen when it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with all that. Finding that balance between like dreamscaping your highest ideals and then leaving that door open to be like, it might not be exactly how I imagined it. Maybe it'll be better. You know, we don't know.
You can reach.
This is Neptune is this is a really spiritual time. It's a great time to just like ask source or ask whatever your higher power is. Like just put the question out into the universe of like, this is what I want. How can I make it happen?
Yeah. Meditate in water.
Yeah, meditate in water. Yeah.
Meditate on the concept of water. Oh, that's too. We're gonna get esoteric.
Yeah, right. It's gonna get real woo in here.
Any parting thoughts? I think we're like we've been at it for a minute.
How long is this?
I don't need to know. We'll find out. Time is an illusion.
I think just like just the overall story. I think we've already covered like kind of going over the whole story. Always helpful to go back to the beginning. It was the quincunx in the South Node in Libra. So again, we are in the process of releasing Venusian things. And then it's finishing with this like super juicy over the top of Venus Neptune conjunction. So I think it's important to like keep in mind the story, like for you personally,
what that story is.
What has that story been? Because I think that it'll be really easy to like, be like moving yourself through the story of Venus and Pisces. And then when that Venus Neptune conjunction hits, it's gonna all feel like it's almost gonna like blind you with all of these.
Or flood.
Yeah, it's gonna flood you with all of these illusions or delusions. And it's just a good time to stay grounded in, okay, where did I start with this transit?
Yeah.
And then what is all this juiciness trying to tell me about what I've been releasing? So yeah.
All right. Well,
do you have any last thoughts?
No, I think I said them, but if you made it this far, congrats. We both see clients. I will put emails or websites in the magic box of things and reach out to us. And thank you for watching.
Yeah.
I'm Sydney.
I'm Bender.
And this was
Bullshit Astrology. Oh, say
BS Astrology.
BS Astrology. I took it too literal.